Hello, I'm Sydney Boyd, and my short oral presentation will be on the role of cell phones in disease tracking. So I'm sure many of you have seen notifications similar to the one on the left pop up if you have an iPhone. I'm not sure of other phones, but specifically for an iPhone, um, you've seen this notification that says COVID-19 exposure. Turn your location settings on to allow us to, let you know if you ever come in contact with someone who has tested positive for example, COVID. So this is an example of contact tracing using our cell phones. So a little background, in order to stop widespread and rampant viruses such as COVID-19, health officials need to be able to locate and isolate both the infected individual and whoever they've made contact with in the past however many days. And the easiest and quickest way to do this is through contact tracing of cell phones. Um, this has been done already a lot. In China, they use mass surveillance of phones to classify individuals by their health status, so whether they're sick, and then from this they can limit their movements. A team at MIT created a prototype app called PrivateKit, which stores a user's data for 28 days, their location data, and it's logged every 5 minutes of where they go. And if the user tests positive for COVID, they can choose, actually, it's important, to share this information with health officials, and then through the app will alert other users who have been in nearby locations. So going back to the choose part, making data submissions voluntary is a good way to maintain the civil rights of everyone, because that's a very big concern with contact tracing, is that tapping into cell phone location data to track the spread of infection and warn people can have some not so good side effects, which we'll get into again. So the language associated with contact tracing we think about exposure, location tracking, GPS, cell phone, data collection, contact tracing, expose, weave, which is interesting, um, nearby, public health, and disease tracking. So all of these words, excuse me, mean something different to everyone. And a couple I'd like to point out is weave. So when you get the COVID notification or the exposure notification on um, your iPhone, for example, it'll start off with the message saying we've detected a nearby case. I just think that's very interesting to take note of, the weave kind of part of it. It's similar to when you're talking about Publix, who the audience is. It's like, who is the speaker to us? Is it Apple? Is it these health officials? Is it the government? So that's just kind of interesting to take note of. Um, Along with the language, the relationship between language and community, there's a lot of people who do not have who are confused by the language of location tracking, contact tracing, expose. Data collection can be extremely intimidating to people. So I think making that connection between communities that aren't as educated on these types of what's really happening behind the scenes needs to be looked at a little more, and is super interesting also. Why should we care? So the frame aspect of it is that when we're signing up, say for example, to share our data with these companies, health officials, we're expecting our data and our location to be used only for disease tracking. However, there's a part of our brain that's similar to the Garfinkel notion where, the frame, what if it shifts from what your expectations are? What if all of a sudden they have our data and they have our location and they start using it, to track just whereabouts? They use it just for other things besides public health tracking. And obviously technology, the cell phone aspect of it. Our professor Alexander Dent, in his piece, What's a Cellular Public? He notes cell phones keep getting smarter, which makes you both more efficient in your labor and also more vulnerable to unwanted scrutiny, going back to the frames. The fear behind data collection is, what if it's not being used just for data collection? We're going to be under scrutiny after that. And he also said that cell phones reduce the response time between two individuals or multiple individuals, and allow communication to transcend geography. And that goes along with my interview I did with a fellow peer of mine. They had a similar kind of fear of cell phone tracking, which I found really interesting. So yes, cell phone tracking and disease tracking. It's an extremely interesting topic, extremely helpful in the public health field, which I am super interested about. So I'm excited to explore this more. And one more thing I like to talk about is predispositions. Ruha Benjamin work talks about how numerous technologies are used to track information that is racialized. So going back to kind of the language, not everyone has the same understanding of the language used. So I just think that's super interesting. Thank you.